lure out Russians. But no, hope it's true. But yeah, but regarding those weapons and companies, I have some doubts, to be honest. And again, I hope it's planned and and the governments are on board. But somehow I feel that some of companies ramp up their production on their own initiative, like to manufacture more. To prepare systems which are not ordered yet, but it's next logical step. Yeah, everyone sees that they will be required. So backlog is huge, yeah, especially for such kits like HIMARS, etc. Because everyone is buying. It's like remember the same thing was with Bayraktars. So they are stamping them out like day and night. Yeah, and then orders came in. Yeah? So I hope it's due to some orders from governments, from big dogs, not like they just filling their stocks up and then hope that those orders will come. But in any case, better in such better. It's good that they are doing, and also on same topic. Sorry for ranting. On same topic, but I also see. I do not know in all Europe, but at least here in Baltics, I guess in Scandinavia, etc., etc. There are government initiated or created defense industry organizations, with companies. In the Baltic states, we have finally some factories opening, which will provide the shells. Yeah, and this cooperation with Finland, and I believe it takes time, but finally we see some real stuff going on out of those factories. So lessons learned, and hope it will continue in such way.
Thank you, Yanis. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's probably a bit of both, I would say, in my opinion. Of course, I'm no expert or anybody to say, it's just my opinion as I see things. I know that in the case of Rheinmetall, though, when they were talking about when Germany wouldn't do certain things, and Rheinmetall was saying, oh, yes, we can do it. I think it was in relation to the Leopards or something. I don't know what these companies make. I forget all the details, but whatever particular item they were talking about, Rheinmetall was saying, oh, yes, we can make them, we can do it. We just need the orders. And they were prepared to go ahead and do it. And there was all the schultzing around. That's why I think it was related to the Leopards. And so I do think in part these companies are not prepared to ramp up anything without actual orders. So that's why I think Chris Windley and I thought it was very interesting that BAE somehow had the foresight to see ahead of time that there was going to be a need and make preparations for these things to happen at least a year in advance. I think if I remember rightly, 2 years. I would have to ask Chris Windley if he can check on that, or I can find the information. But I think you're right as well about the political situation. NATO, it's a big cat wrangling affair, isn't it? It's like the EU. People that are in the EU will be used to this, and we take it, I think, much easier than maybe many others, because we know that they just have to do all the back and forth. It's a big negotiation thing. That's why I always thought it was fantastic that Jens Stoltenberg stayed, because he's an excellent negotiator over his career. He has been a wonderful negotiator at many different things. So, I'm glad he stayed because of that. Because some of it is, as you say, getting all of those NATO members to accept the seriousness of the situation that we're in and where they think Russia's next steps and next actions will be. So, of course, they're not all going to come to that realization at the same time. But I do think we are getting closer to that, and I definitely see that things have changed. I noticed that as well, Yanis, the same as you do. I think many other people have mentioned that there seems to be a change as well. Whether it's just timing and it was always planned that way, and now that's why things are moving, who knows? We may find out one day. But for now, I guess we just have to keep pushing and be pleased at what's happening. Now, Yanis seems to have dropped down because I've been waffling on too long. Christopher, did you want to add anything quickly before we go to D?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to say, in response to the second but last speaker, that, and excuse me if I sneeze and cough, but I've got a stinking cold. The last but one speaker saying about armaments, and artillery, crossing into Europe, but not actually making it to the Ukraine, more as if they were fortifying a kind of western line beyond Ukraine should the Russians win against Ukraine, then they would be fortified against further incursion by Russia. Now, history tells us a lot. We should be informed by history. And it brought to mind to me the Maginot Line, where, as an element of appeasement, Western Europe drew back after the Nazi German invasion of Poland, drew back and created, in fact, prior to, sorry, I do apologize, stinky cold. Prior to the invasion by Nazi Germany of Poland, Western Europe and certainly the USA had at that point almost zero interest in becoming involved. All withdrew back to what they termed the Maginot Line, and that would be fortified, and Nazi Germany couldn't get any further. Now, we know how that all worked out, and it didn't work out particularly well, and we had 5 and a bit years of it not working out terribly well. So really learning from history the greater good for the security of all within the European continent would be to give the armaments, artillery, etc., that does exist on the European mainland to the Ukrainians in order to basically stop this at the pass. We don't need another Maginot Line. We need a defeat of Russia within Ukraine and a complete demolition of Russia's power within that region. And that's probably all I wanted to say, is that we don't need another Maginot Line, which was somewhat, as I say, something of an appeasement move. There should be no appeasement within this particular war theatre. It is win, win, win. And if we're in a position to give them, to give Ukraine all of the necessary equipment required to win, then we should be doing that now and not fortifying ourselves beyond the Ukraine, because the theatre is in the Ukraine and it can be won and ought to be won if other European countries and the United States and Canada would come forward, ante up, and give equipment that is already movable there and movable to the Ukrainians to use to defeat Russia before they get any further into Europe. And that's me with
Thank
my
you very much.
goal.
Thank you very much, Dee. Go ahead, Jenny. Welcome.
Welcome. So we had a discussion this morning morning in Europe. I better specify that because it's still morning in other parts of the world. And one of the things that we discussed was, everybody should send more artillery pieces to Ukraine. And even though that would be amazing, but we forget about the training of the troops on that piece of equipment. It's not just because you can fire one piece of equipment doesn't mean that you're qualified to fire another. One of the best examples I have is that the British Armed Forces, they recently bought archers from Sweden, and they had the best artillerists come over to Sweden to be trained. It took them 14 weeks to be trained on the archer. If they already are artillery, like they're used to artillery pieces, they've been firing them most of their career, yet they still needed 14 weeks. And when you multiply that by the different artillery systems that are around Europe, that is time away from the battlefield that Ukraine cannot afford. We just can't take away people or soldiers from the front lines to train them on a system, and then they have to learn like 5-6 different systems. So that's whatever pieces they have now, let's keep them with shells for those systems. The archer uses 155, so that's the good part, where they have a few different pieces, but they use the same shell type. So push on your government to send 155 millimeter shells and 122 millimeter shells, because that is the thing that is used really, really a lot. It's the same thing with airplanes. It would be amazing if Ukraine could get Mirage or the Eurofighter, but is it really? They've been training for a long time on the F-16s, and they've been training on Gripen. Are they going to train on 2 new airframes? I don't think that is a good use of the time. And another thing that was brought up was logistics. If we flood the border between Poland and Ukraine or any other country, and then can they handle the influx of all of that equipment and all of that material? That is something to keep in mind too. I had completely forgotten all about it. So it's those two things you have to keep in mind, that don't put in more new equipment for them to learn. That takes manpower away from the battlefield. And 2, do they have the logistics to actually move it from the Polish-Ukrainian border or whichever border it is to where the equipment is needed? Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, I think you're right. What they need is, what she meant was more of the same artillery systems. But I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody else. I could be wrong, but yeah, I take your point. You're right. It does need to be a consideration, and of course, the more technical these things get, the more engineers and other people that they need for the support system, especially when it comes to airframes and things like that. But absolutely, send them more of the same artillery, send them more of the same missiles and the same artillery systems that they're already using to fire them, and the same. Actual artillery, missiles and shells and all the rest of it that they need. Absolutely. That definitely makes much more sense, of course. Bernesto, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
No problem, Tracy. I was struggling with getting to the button. Good morning to you. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here, yourself and Christopher, for volunteering. I really appreciate your efforts, and everyone here just commented. I wanted to come up and give my support to both Jenny and Miss D, who have been speaking here just now. Not just do I agree, but I think it's important we keep reminding each other that this is something we have done, and all we need to do is continue doing it in greater number, and that the experience we've learned from our logistic trains and our logistics supplies inform future deliveries, so that what we've learned for the last 2 years can in fact help us improve our delivery. I'm just speaking in abstract, not speaking directly about any current legislation going on. I also wanted to mention and ask folks who might have, ask people who know more than I do about this week's State of the Union speech, not from a political point of view, strictly speaking from an aid for Ukraine point of view. I'd like to canvass the room to see if people have any insight or thoughts on what might be getting announced either before or after that speech, or like during or after the speech, which is Thursday this week in sitting in the House of Congress, I believe. That's what I wanted to come up and ask, and to thank you for being here, and encourage people to retweet, share the space, donate at MriyaReport.org. We are fundraising for Mavic 3 drones for our friend Danilo in the 95th. So please give according to your means. Slava Ukraini.
Herem Slava, thank you very much, Bernesto. One way that I think, actually, I've just put something in the nest. You were making me think then of the ways that what we can do in the meantime, and of course the fundraisers and the things that we buy here with the money that you all fundraise. Those things make a big difference whilst Ukraine is waiting for other types of ammunition and various things that they need. Of course, these things don't replace what they're needing, but they can be useful to fill those holes. So I put a thread in the nest for you all to look at. You may have seen it before. It's a thread dedicated to every single one of the Maria Report listeners and supporters, all the generous donors, because as it says, without you, we would not be able to do what we do. So this thread was made as a big thank you to all of you for your trust and the tremendous support that all of you give. Of course, it's only possible because of you. So if you look there are all the things, well, not all the things, because we don't get pictures from everybody. Some things are operational security, of course we can't. And we don't ever expect to get pictures and videos. These wonderful people just choose to take the time out of their day, sometimes in very dangerous conditions, I might add. And sometimes, like the SBU Alpha, who, of course, I have to be, well, a little bit, am I a little bit biased about them, do you think, Christopher? Maybe, just a little bit. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Me? I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, these guys, they took the time. We heard from Wardogo. It was quite amusing and a little difficult to get them to be able to speak that message on the video that they provided to all of you, to say thank you to all of you. So go and check that out, because fangirl or not, the message is for all of you. It's not for me. So go listen to that message if you haven't already. That's there in the thread. And there are many other things that we fundraised for here in the thread. There are the guys there from the State Emergency Service with, was it, I think, Andrew? I'm sure it was Andrew who came to speak to us from the State Emergency Service. We've had several Andrews. It's a very popular name, it seems to me, in Ukraine, a bit like Andy in the UK. but never mind, I'm getting sidetracked. There's the wonderful video in there from the Deputy Mayor of Kherson City for when there were generators needed because there was no power, thanks to Russia blowing the Kharkiv Dam and flooding many areas, but Kherson was one of the ones that was hit particularly badly. So we helped there, and other generators to provide food and relief. That finally arrived, so that went out to the frontline areas, to areas where people didn't have any power. You got protein, quality canned protein, so all sorts of different things in there. Radio equipment, electronic warfare. Go and have a good look at them on a Sunday afternoon. And whilst you are doing that, you can also, if you would like to, you can look at Christopher and I. Are we making a drone thread? Aren't we, Christopher? A little feature we are having at the beginning of our segments. So check out our drone thread. I've just posted that out not long ago, so you can all see that on my profile there. Now, this drone thread, if you don't know what I'm talking about, is showing you some videos of, well, Russian things getting exploded. Of course, I've censored them, as always, to make sure you've got to be careful to censor these things. But if you would like to see that, wait, where is it? I've just posted it. Why is it not showing up on my profile? Can you see it, Christopher? Is Twitter playing silly beggars with me today? It better not be. I cannot see it on my profile. This is very odd indeed. I have to check my drafts now and see if it's sent. I didn't send it, Christopher. That's not very good, is it?
Well, I was about to report I don't see it either. Back to you.
It's Sunday afternoon. You have to let me off. I have not slept all night, of course, because it's SBU night on a Saturday night. Now then, let's have a look. See if we get so there. I've posted it now, so we just have to wait a moment for it to come through, and you can see there you are, as discussed on MriyaReport. So on the Christopher and Tracy show, you will get your daily drone thread. Today, first in your drone thread, we have a video from the Special Forces showing you effective work of the UAV operators. And in just one day, in the course of reconnaissance, operators of one of the units discovered a number of enemy targets in the Donetsk direction, including ammunition warehouse and the location and storage of the group of the enemy UAV repeater. Go have a look at that video. I put that at the top because I think that's the best one. Christopher, you, I hope, are having chance to look at these now. I'm not sure if you're even hearing me if you're watching these videos. Maybe you're watching them with the sound off. I don't know. But you have to see some of those videos because they are definitely, well, I'm not sad about these things given what's happened earlier on today in Ukraine because of Russia. Now, the next one in the list, second for you all in the drone thread. So this is the 92nd Brigade. They stopped an enemy attack. This was in the Chaziv Yar direction. This was the result of the complex work of the drones of the Code 9.2 group and the artillerymen who finished them off. So that the UAV even survived the cluster shells. So that's second in the list for you. So some crafty work there. Some filigree work, I think, as General Malyuk would say. Third in the list of your drone thread today, in the temporarily occupied Oleski, in the Kherson region, the National Guardsmen destroyed a Russian ammunition depot. I like to see these go up for obvious reasons, like you all, because they have rather large explosions. And of course, don't forget the secondaries afterwards. That's sometimes the best bit, Christopher, especially if they have lots of sparks coming off. That can be quite fun.
And the flying Ivans.
Oh, of course, yes. Flying Ivans. And what's the other one? Turret tosses. Although we don't see many of them recently, or I don't. Anyway, maybe they're still out there. I'm not sure. But anyway, this drone managed to hit them, and fire and ammunition broke out in the warehouse. So that is your drone thread today. A little shorter today, Christopher, but it is Sunday, so we can let them off. And we did get one from the Special Operations Forces, which is quite a treat. That's like a compilation. So I hope Christopher is now watching those videos and looking to see if he can see any flying Ivans or any turret tosses. Now Christopher may go on the hunt for turret tosses. Now I have said that. I've got a few things open that I was looking at, Christopher, a number of things that we can go over, because Sunday is quieter in terms of the news. Of course, it's not quieter in terms of the things that Russia does, so we will keep you updated on what's going on there. But there's less news that comes through, well, just because there's less government business and things like that that happen on a weekend, as you would expect. So there's an article from Mikhailo Fedorov that I've been saving for a while. It was a little bit old, a couple of weeks old, but that contains some interesting things about a number of questions that he was asked on various different topics, including that the military ID project that you and I were talking about, whether it was going to be through the DIA system or not. A few other different questions. So that's like a variety of things in that article. It's not one thing specifically. I've got, let's have a look. I've got this article here that I was looking at, which is quite interesting. Sorry, I'm just looking at this to see which one I want to pick. They're all in our folder. I've picked them from our folder, all of these. There's a story from the perspective of a wife, and there's some words from the child as well. I mean, that's from somebody that she's lost. So in one way, it's quite sad, maybe not appropriate for right now, given what's going on. But in some ways, it's very heartwarming, the way that she speaks about him as well. So I don't know, maybe you want to look at that, Christopher, or what do you think? Or have you got something that you wanted to cover specifically?
No, nothing at the moment. I'm sort of beavering around in the background.
Okay, so let's go over this then. So let's talk about drones, and let's talk about, well, startups, small companies making drones, even people making drones on a small scale in their homes and things like that. Sorry, I just needed a drink. So, Kiev, Ukraine, at the end of a bare concrete hallway in a building that sat empty until a few months ago, a dozen men hunch over a cover of desks, assembling pieces of black carbon filter and soldering on computer chips. A gyroscope whirs, testing the final product, an explosive attack drone. This workshop in Western Ukraine is one of dozens of startups producing cheap weapons that are helping the Ukrainian troops against the Russian, when they're short on ammunition with aid from the West being stalled. So Ukraine is trying to compensate this by producing an army of 1 million explosive FPV drones. The country lacks a modern arms industry for now, as they're obviously still ramping that up, and that's very new. Well, the scale that they're ramping it up to as well. And that can sustain the war effort, going forward. But of course, some of that is going to take time, and some of it quite some time as well. And of course, $1 billion before they can produce, the kind of artillery level and systems that they need on a large scale moving forward. So, however, drones which can be assembled from parts on the commercial market and cost only a few $100s each are comparatively cheap and easy to produce. Makeshift factories are now popping up all over Ukraine and churning out thousands of FPV drones each month. The drones are then delivered to the front, where soldiers attach explosives and, of course, fly them onto Russian trenches and armoured vehicles, and they are guided by operators, being that they're FPVs, using a controller and wearing goggles. They show some very interesting pictures here. I'll see if I can post this for people to have a look at, because they give you a picture of the view inside. It looks, well, I don't know, it looks quite professional to me to say that it's such a small scale, but what do I know about what these things look like? And you can see the guys hunched over these desks as they were explaining there. So the drones are delivered to the front. With our economy, we cannot make tanks, said Mikhailo Havriluk, the chief executive of Sparrow Aviva, a drone production company. So our solution is to make drones, he said. With Ukraine now on the defensive after last summer's counter-offensive failed to make a substantial breakthrough, FPV drones have become crucial in Kyiv's effort to hold the Russians back. The drones can't do as much damage as artillery shells, of course, or mortar bombs, which are now in short supply. But Ukrainian forces are using drones to strike armoured vehicles at their weak points and to immobilise them, targeting Russian trucks, armour and equipment, which actually, you know, it's quite impressive over time how the accuracy, I mean, obviously it's what you would expect the more you use these things, but when you look at these videos now, the accuracy, Christopher, in which these drones fly into and around and, you know, under various different things, it's pretty impressive, really. You know, especially when they fly under these nets that are meant to catch them out. That's pretty funny. Well, I think it is anyway. So if you've got any questions, guys, come and bring your questions. Please feel free to interrupt me at any time if you would like to comment on anything that I'm saying here. I don't mind you interrupting me. So where did I get to? Let's have a look. Ukraine pioneered the use of drones on the battlefield early in the war, using store-bought quadcopters to spot the Russian positions. But in the almost 2 years, like I said, this was a couple of weeks ago, this was written, Moscow has made a huge investment in drones of all kinds and is converting shopping malls in central Russia into drone factories, according to local activists. Well, we've seen evidence of that, haven't we? These various different things that keep burning in Russia.
Furniture stores. They keep burning furniture stores, apparently.
Yes, exactly my point, Christopher. These things and taking over. What was the other things? I don't know. Some kind of warehouses. I can't remember now. But yes, I don't know. Wood warehouses that seem to involve wood in some way. Sawmills and things. I guess because they've got space in them. We've seen tanks and all sorts of things in there, haven't we? But yes, taking over shopping malls and all sorts of things to be able to sneakily make these drones. And even though they can't do it on the massive scale that they want to, they're doing it on a scale enough that's making a difference. So let's have a look. Because of frequent Russian missile strikes, Ukrainian drone producers are keeping their operations smaller, with a few dozen employees in one building, a few dozen more in another, within the hopes of keeping their work hidden. Still, they are aiming to produce on a mass scale, said Mikhailo Fedorov, the Minister of Digital Transformation, and he said that they are actually on pace to meet President Zelensky's goal that he set earlier in the year of producing at least 1 million drones within the year. So again, impressive work from Ukrainians being on targets that they set themselves. It seems to me that they just don't set themselves up to fail. They look at what needs doing, they look at what they think they can achieve, and they set a realistic target. That's what it seems to me from my experience anyway. But of course, that's just my opinion. So Now, this will be an increase of more than 100 times a production from 2022. Ukraine now makes 62 different kinds of drones, and drone producers are working on new models that can fly further, carry heavier munitions, and evade Russian electronic jammers, which cut off contact between the drone and the pilot. We've seen at least one drone that Mikhailo Fedorov announced himself. It was like to make a protective dome over the armor that it's protecting. And it also had the ability specifically to stop GLONASS. It was targeted at GLONASS because of the Russians' usage of that and other, what do they call them, satellite communications things as well. So maybe he's talking about that, maybe something different, and maybe several of, but that's at least one that I know of, which has electronic jammers to do that. That are quite sophisticated, because if they're telling you that, imagine what else it can do, Christopher, that he's not telling you about. That's what I always think is quite intriguing. So the Wall Street Journal visited one of Sparrow's 3 facilities, which collectively makes 3,000 FPV drones a month, and Havrilik and his partner invested $500,000 to get the company off the ground, with the goal of eventually producing 10,000 drones a month. Late last year, this one company in particular moved into an empty building in western Ukraine, installed some ventilation tubes, and turned it into an FPV factory. I'm sure it was not as simple as they make it sound. The company purchases some parts like carbon filters, cameras, and engines, but manufactures most of the parts and designs and the drones in-house. That's interesting. I wonder if this company goes through the Brave One cluster. It doesn't mention anything about that, so I'm not getting the impression that it does. So that's another intriguing question that's just occurred to me. So in one room, a 20-year-old engineer looks at models of the drone on the screens, tweaks his design, and then behind him, several 3D printers crank up the plastic parts. In the next room along, workers weld together battery packs with different sizes for different drone models, and then cover them in black plastic. The drones themselves were assembled at the end of the hall, and workers sat in pairs at desks, where they screwed, glued, and welded parts together. The room is packed tightly with hundreds of drones in various states of assembly, that's good to know, stacked around them on shelves and on the floor. So much so that the employees almost risk knocking something over every time they stand up from their desk. I'm not sure that sounds very good. That sounds like a fire risk to me. What if you have to run out and you trip over? But never mind. Again, maybe an unimportant question. There wasn't yet a ventilation system in the room, and the welders had to cover their noses with scarves. So basically they started work before those tubes were even installed for the ventilation system. Talk about dedication and determination and motivation. The finished drones look bare bones compared with ones that are available online. A thin carbon filter body with 4 sets of propellers and a battery pack that's strapped to the top. The biggest issue is getting parts from China. Now, actually, I was wondering about this because we've heard about China, making various moves to stop exporting drone parts and whatnot to, I don't think every country, I think just certain countries. Is it like Russia's saying, like this unfriendly countries obviously, I'm doing big air quotes. What do you think, Christopher?
Well, there's some sophisticated parts that require, if you're going to build them in mass, require the machineries to be able to do it, right? So the most complicated part on many of these drones is, aside from the circuitry, the brain, if you will, are the motors themselves, right? And everybody remembers back from their classes in grade school, perhaps in high school, that it's basically a set of magnets that alternate, and that by that alternation, it creates rotation. But the magnets themselves are created by windings of very fine coated copper. And so to be able to do those motors, because those motors are kind of tiny, they need to have the machinery that's set up to do that. And so I think that's where the parts from China come in more than say the body, or as they're doing it, they're 3D printing pieces, and obviously that they're making or fabricating that on site. So if they can solve the problem of creating the motors in-house, then they'll truly be on their way to being self-sufficient. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Christopher. So I'm just going to post some pictures, a couple of pictures for people to have a look at, and they can see what I'm talking about, because so you can see here a picture of inside, as I said to you, and then a close-up of them putting together parts of the drones. And then there's also a diagram here with a little bit of text. So I'm going to post that there for people to have a look at. I will do that in a moment, but first I will just finish off with this little bit here. So I think it's really interesting. I don't know if you've seen this, Christopher, or had a chance to have a look at it previously. It shows you the diagram, which I think is kind of fascinating to people like me who have no expertise in these matters, but find it absolutely fascinating anyway. And it shows you all the parts and labels them as, you know, the diagram shows you the flight controller, the zip tie. They even point out the zip tie, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So they say first person drones like this one in the diagram, which can be manufactured for a few $100s from parts mostly available on the commercial market, are becoming the most important weapon. So coming back to, where did I get to about the little bit that they said about China? Sorry, I lost my part now by taking those pictures, taking screenshots of those pictures for everybody to have a look at. So I was coming back to what they were saying about China. Go past the pictures. Oh, I've lost my place now, Christopher. That's not very good. I'm not doing very well today. It's Sunday. You have to all let me off. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it all day. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it is what it is. You'll get there. I'm here for you. I'm just noodling in the background.
That's okay. You can noodle away, no problem. So here we go. I'm almost back in the right place. It's quite long, is this article? I know. I think it's interesting how they sit in pairs. Do you think there's a specific reason for that, or that's just randomly how they sit together? Because workers are sat in pairs. I don't know if that's probably completely irrelevant anyway. But never mind. Yeah. So, what was I saying about China? The biggest issue getting parts from China and the logistics, of course, of getting them there as well at the same time. Oh, here we are. I found it. So, noting that protests by truckers in Poland had also slowed down the flow of commercial goods into Ukraine in recent months, saying that they've noticed a difference in particular. He said the company is spending roughly $14,000 on parts a month, and it sounds like a big sum for the army, but he emphasises that actually, in terms of relevance, that's quite a small expense. So the Ukrainian government buys about half the drones each month that they make, Havryluk said, and volunteers and local government buy up the rest and deliver them to military units. How interesting is that, Christopher? I mean, we see lots of things going on locally in this regard for people, you know, making donations to. Have we got a hot mic, or is that you, Christopher? For people making donations to local, regional military administrations and things like that. But anyway, so yeah, half of it's paid for by volunteers, and then they deliver them to military units, which I would think would include the local regional military administrations. So the Minister of Digital Transformation, Fedorov, said the government has offered a series of incentives for drone companies to scale up, including tax reductions and elimination of import duties. And the role of the state is more like coordination and creating opportunities, said Mikhailo Fedorov, adding that the government was offering big contracts for producers in order to scale up. So far, Sparrow has, however, only 70 employees, but all three of them are men, and they all plan to add another 130. Wow, that's pretty good, isn't it? Over the next 2 months. So that's quite a lot of new employees over a short period of time, really, because it sounds a lot 2 months, doesn't it? But you've got to interview these people, and do all your various. And sometimes with these types of job, you maybe have to go through a first and second stage interview. But maybe there might not be so much red tape in this case. Let's hope. I don't know. But anyway, 2 months, I think that's pretty good. And he said he only hires friends and relatives of current employees because he's extremely wary of the danger each new staff member brings and the safety risk. If anyone betrays the factory's location to the Russians, of course, it will be targeted with missiles. So it's good to know that they're being conscientious about these things. I wouldn't expect any different, of course. Havrilluk said employees have an unofficial exemption from conscription, which is a significant perk when the Ukrainian military is now planning to get another 500,000 soldiers. Not everyone wants to fight or can fight, and this means that they can be extremely useful in terms of the drone army. 2 months ago, this guy was working as a welder. So there we go. This is how Ukrainians are doing incredible things to fill these gaps. Whilst you are all doing incredible things here to help donate, retweet, reshare, and fundraise, so we can help Ukrainians fill gaps and give them tools that they need as well. Martin, welcome. Happy Sunday to you.
Thank you, Tracy and Christopher. Great job you guys are doing, as always, co-hosting MriyaReport. Please retweet this site. You've heard this many times from me before when I've come up to speak. The one indispensable source of accurate, ongoing information about Muscovy's genocidal war against democratic Ukraine. Slava Ukraini. Whoa. Whoa, I just dropped my phone. Holy mackerel. These Sunday mornings, even after a cup of coffee and a good breakfast, I'm still awkward. Anyways, I was listening with half an ear, actually, because I was doing something else, to the discussion about drones. And as it happened, I just clicked on an article on CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation website. A friend sent me about drones in Ukraine, and I posted it on Twitter or X, as it's now called, of course. And I wonder if you'd like to post it in the nest, or if you wouldn't mind me reading it. So in case those who don't have a chance to read it themselves can get a fuller appreciation of what exactly is happening with regards to drone production in Ukraine and drone use. So let me know what you think. Would you like me to read the article?
Yes, go ahead and read it, Martin. That would be lovely. And if you could DM it to me, I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, or Tracy, what you could do is just go onto my timeline, and you could see that I just posted it on X, and then you could do with it what you will.
Sure, thank you, Martin.
Oh, you're welcome. Very welcome. Okay, the article's posted today, March 3rd. Drones are key in Ukraine's fight against Russia. Now it wants 1 million more of them. The Ukraine-Russia war has become a proving ground for what drones can do in conflict. Ukrainian forces have used small first-person first-person view FPV drones to blow up Russian tanks in their soil, and longer-range devices to damage military aircraft in Russia. Drone attacks this winter have hit oil refineries deep inside Russian territory, as well as a major steel factory. Explosive-laden naval drones have slammed into Russian ships. With the war now in its third year, Ukraine is leaning hard into drones as a combat strategy, ramping up its production, its domestic production, and counting on allies to deliver 1 million of them in the next 12 months. Why? Because these relatively cheap, flexible tools are helping stave off the advance of Russian troops by targeting opposing soldiers. FPV drone operators fly them along the front lines so they can hone in on and hit the opposing forces, said Samuel Bendit of CNA, a security think tank in Arlington, Virginia. Quote, individual soldiers are not safe on a battlefield, quote, he said, but that's just as true for Ukrainian soldiers who must avoid the threat posed by Russia's own drones. 2 weeks ago, Canada announced it will send more than 800 drones to Ukraine that can spot targets at long range and also strike them. Yet that's just a small fraction of the drones Ukraine wants to have on hand. A group of Western nations, including Latvia, Germany, the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands, aims to send 1 million drones, including small FPV drones, to Ukraine by the end of next February. Latvian Defense Minister Andris Spruds has said Ukraine needs these tools, quote, to tilt the balance, end quote, in the war, particularly when it's struggling to acquire the ammunition it needs to fight back against Russia. How likely is it that Ukraine will get the 1 million drones it's seeking? It depends on who you ask. Quote, I think it's a good target to have, as Ukraine has used drones to make up for munitions, end quote. Alexander Lanoska, an associate professor of political science at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, said via email. But Lanoska pointed out that European allies have so far failed to deliver promised amounts of ammunition to Ukraine. Bendit said the headline number of 1 million is not inconceivable, as Ukraine is already producing a variety of drones, including thousands of units that can be used to strike targets at a distance. He said with that many drones, Ukraine could potentially launch tens of thousands of them at targets each month. And even if half or more failed, that would still leave a whole lot of drones doing damage. Mikhailo Fedorov, Ukraine's Minister for Digital Transformation, recently told Reuters that Kiev had ordered production of 300,000 drones in 2023, and 1/3 of those were sent to the front. He said that number did not include the additional and significant contribution of equipment from volunteer groups. Private organizations have also helped train many of the drone pilots working on the front lines. One of them is the Dronarium Academy, which helps people learn how to fly drones, understand their limitations, and use them in battle. Quote, the war has definitely changed us, quote, end quote. Founder Ruslan Bialyev said in an emailed statement, noting the Dronarium started its work in 2017. Quote, from the very beginning, it became clear to us that this is a new format of war and drones would play one of the decisive roles, end quote. Bialyev said thousands of pilots have trained on several types of drones over the course of the war with Russia. The students span all branches of the Ukrainian forces, he said. Colonel Kristen Thompson, a U.S. Air Force military fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, credits Ukraine's nimble use of drones, love that word, with helping it hold its own against Russia. Here's the quote, Ukraine's ability to acquire and crowdsource commercial drone technology, tactically modify drones in the field based on real-time feedback, and alter tactics to defeat anti-drone systems have proved to be crucial to its war effort, end quote, Thompson wrote in a recent analysis. It's expected drones will continue to be a key part of Ukraine's war effort for some time to come. Last month, President Volodymyr Zelensky announced the creation of a new drone-focused branch of the military. Mykola Bielskov, a research fellow at Ukraine's National Institute for Strategic Studies, predicts this move will help the military get more get a more accurate picture of how drones work best in battle. In a report last month, he writes it could also make it easier to coordinate the training of drone pilots. Military minds outside the country have also been watching what's happening on the Ukrainian battlefield to inform their own thinking on conflict and drones. Last month, the US Army said it would stop trying to develop a next generation Scout helicopter, despite having spent $2 billion US on its efforts to date, because events in Ukraine had made the project obsolete. End story. Fascinating. Bravo, Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Harold and Slava, thank you, Martin. That was great.
You're welcome,
Well,
Christopher.
absolutely. Thank you so much. How are you enjoying the tail end of the hockey season?
Yeah, this is about 20, let's see, less than 25 games left for most teams. The Jets yesterday had a spectacular win over the Carolina Hurricanes in Carolina. They were down 3-0. Third period, they scored 4 straight goals and then a 5th goal into an empty net. So I hope that carries over into the rest of the regular season and into the playoffs, because I'm always hopeful that the Jets will win the Stanley Cup at some point. But even if they go deep in the playoffs, that would be encouraging. The Brain Trust has really built a great team. I watched another game last night. It was Calgary against Pittsburgh Penguins. Of course, my favorite player, my favorite athlete of all time, Sidney Crosby, who needs no introduction, of course, plays for Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh lost 4-3, similar to the way the Jets beat Carolina. Calgary came back from a 3-1 deficit to score 3 straight goals to win 4-3. So it's going to be interesting. I'm always ready to talk Ukraine and talk sports, especially hockey. So yeah, thanks for asking. And I guess I don't know if you're a big. I don't think you're a big hockey fan, Christopher, but I think you do follow it somewhat. And the New York Rangers are doing.
Yeah, they didn't do so well against Toronto.
Yeah, they didn't, but still, you've got a really good team there, and I think it's going to be interesting, as I say, now into the home stretch, and with the playoffs just on the not too distant horizon. So yeah, at some point, if you ever want me to come up and talk a little bit more about hockey, I'd be more than willing to do so. Hockey and Ukraine, the two consuming aspects of my life at the moment, if I may say so in some jest.
Thank you, as always, Martin. It's always nice to see you. It's always lovely when you pop up.
Thank you, Christopher. Keep up the good work.
No worries. We shall do. Cornelius, sir, go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry, folks. That screensaver came on. I had to fish through my fingerprints and such. Yeah, just to close off Martin's thoughts there. I think, not to close them off, Winnipeg Jets, right in the middle of the heartland of expatriate Ukraine. I mean, Winnipeg's just right in the middle of a massive amount of Ukrainian settlement across the country. I think, I hesitate to claim any authority here, but I think that Ukrainian population around the area of Winnipeg and in the prairies there is possibly the largest outside of Ukrainian or outside of Ukraine population that there is. Martin, have you heard anything about that?
He dropped down to.
Did he? Listen.
Oh,
okay,
wait,
so
he's coming back up. He's coming back up.
See, he'll be back up in a sec. I'll ask him a second question, and well, it's not really a second question; it's an observation. Drones. Okay, rewind back to about 2,000 years ago, and we had shields and swords and maybe some long sticks with pointy bronze things on the end of them, and those were universal tools in the business of fighting, whether it be large scale or small scale fighting. And it's interesting. We better start listening to historians about how to get development happening in fast enough loops and change ready, because look at what distinct human organization and methods did with the same tools. Right now, people are developing drones. Everybody's focused on how nifty a drone is and what it can do, and etc. But it's not going to be long. In fact, I'm sure there's institutes of learning in martial affairs that are looking at how do we organize humans in such a way as to make maximum use of those drones, whether it's in various roles. And I couldn't imagine which roles I did: reconnaissance, strike, defense, alarming, surveillance, etc. There's all sorts of ways. But remember, they used to have rabble groups fight against rabble groups without, just hitting each other with swords, and maybe having a shield or a sling, for instance, back in the times of David and Goliath. And then they organized into phalanxes, and then the progression was into legions. But the cycle of concept turnover was broad, huge timescales. But now the timescales are so fast, and with the advent of AI, it's getting really, really fast. So I'm interested to see if Martin's got thoughts about that.
Go ahead, Martin.
Oh, thank you, Cornelius and Christopher and Tracy and everyone else. Yeah, I don't know what to say, what more to add to what Cornelius said. That my expertise, if I have any expertise at all, and I don't think I do, I'm just sort of a generalist in many things, and even that's up for debate amongst many people. And I wouldn't argue with them. Yeah, drone technology, as a general comment, there I go again, is changing the face of the battlefield. And as you could see from that article that I just read, in which Tracy is will post onto the Nest, it's the way of the future. And go Ukraine, go! I mean, knock the hell out of the genocidal invaders with drones and every other piece of kit that you have. Just further, Cornelius and everyone, to the Ukrainians. Yeah, my own province of Manitoba. Of course, I live in the capital city, Winnipeg, population of close to 800,000. We have well over 165,000 people of Ukrainian heritage who live here. That's and across Canada, well over, I've mentioned this before, of course, as of others, well over 1 million people of Ukrainian heritage. Ukrainians first came here in the late 19th century as farmers in mostly in Western Canada, my own province of Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and neighboring Alberta, so-called prairie provinces, though not all of the topography is prairie. And since the illegal, unprovoked war of aggression launched by Muscovy against democratic Ukraine, Canada itself has welcomed in. Latest statistics I've heard are at least 230,000 Ukrainian refugees, and I've met a good number of them. My partner and I, whenever we're out and about shopping or wherever, and we hear people speaking what we think is Ukrainian, I always stop them and talk with them and say hello, and just most of them speak English to one degree or another, much better than I speak Ukrainian, of course, and welcome them and tell them, Slava Ukraini. So just apropos of your comment, Cornelius, yeah, we are right in the heart of a country that was developed by Ukrainian pioneers to this wonderful country called Canada. My own grandparents, I should say, were from my father's side were Romanian Jews who came here at the beginning of the 20th century and they were farming in Saskatchewan as well. So there were different waves of immigrant farmers, or different ethnic groups of farmers, I guess you could say, of settlers from Eastern Europe, and Ukrainians being amongst the foremost because they had so much experience, of course, in their own countries. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. We are the second largest diaspora of Ukrainians in the world, first being Russia, which is which is understandable, but Canada is home to, as I say, a huge number of people of Ukrainian background. And as a kid growing up, going to school, of course, living in the north part of Winnipeg, which was typically an immigrant area and still is, different immigrants from different parts of the world, because we're very multicultural, multiculturalism being part of the Canadian fabric, as it is for other countries. I went to school, kids, we were Jewish, we were Ukrainian, we were Polish, German, whatever background. And, they are part of the fabric, the tapestry of this grand country. So enough blabbing on my part. Just wanted to fill that in. And thanks for listening to me. And everyone, keep up the good work. We're on the right side of history. Please retweet this site. And Slava Ukraini.
Gotta say there, Martin, thank you for that. Generous to the people that come up with ideas on a broad scale. So don't sell yourself short. And I like Saskatchewan because it's the only place in Canada that you can watch your dog run away for 3 days.
Thank you very much. So it looks like we're having a Canadian hour, so we just need Adam to join us now. It looks like Martin dropped down. Maybe he'll come back up again. People are popping up and down today. Ernesto, welcome. Please go ahead.
Hello, Tracy, again. Thank you. I've been having the same bit of Twitter prox myself, being up and then trying to speak and then flashing down again. I actually came up to say hello to Cornelius. Hello, Cornelius, and to Martin. Great to hear from both. I loved the idea from Martin to have the hockey and Ukraine segment. Something that I've been chatting with in other forums with other folks, and I'd love to have such a segment here. So maybe we work on that, Martin. Might be something that's bringing in the shop. It might be something we can get going. I'd be very interested in. I think it kind of is a nice dovetail joint in with our discussion yesterday evening about the broader support for Ukraine and her culture, and how as part of our role for support and advocacy it ties in perfectly. Both, say, cultural works, be they literary or musical or theatre, opera, any kind of art, or indeed sport, because it's part of human Ukrainian life as well. And so, given it's such an easy topic because there are so many superstars of Ukrainian descent or Ukrainians who play hockey, to me it just makes a lot of sense. But we'd have to have interest and have folks willing to chat it. Otherwise it'd just be me reading various articles I thought were interesting, which can be very boring and defeats the purpose. So I came up to say hi and to support the idea of it. And also I really love to hear when people share their own experiences, be they like family immigration and coming to a different place as people arriving, and how that story is eternal, really. And something similar Mr. Zelig was mentioning about growing up in a school or in a town or a district with various different children of nationalities growing up with you, and something I was able to experience as well. And lucky to say, I'm actually lucky to and proud to say I grew up with people from many different European and African nations in our school together. We had actually one or two Americans too. It was quite an interesting experience. But I feel lucky because it has given me a respect and a moment of pause always to listen to a Polish person, or to listen to a Ukrainian woman, or to listen to one of my very good friends was actually a Russian family who were Lithuanians, but they were Russian originally, had just gone to Lithuania in like the 50s or the 60s. And happened to end up in Ireland and went to the school I went in. Gave me a great perspective, and I'll always pay credit to that. I'd always voice up and make a loud crow in support of this method of integration of people and letting us all grow together and learn from each other and enrich our general culture by dipping and learning from one another, and have no place for this disgusting supremacy that we see from the would-be criminal empire. So that's what I wanted to come and say, and to appreciate the space, to encourage folks to give according to your means. I know today is God's day in some people's holy book. If that is the case and you feel like doing some charity, please give according to your means. MriyaReport.org. All currency is accepted, and you will get yourself a pristine IRS tax deductible receipt if you pay taxes to the IRS, so you can win on both sides. Slava Ukraini.
Hello, Slava. Thank you so much, Ernesto. Go ahead, Cornelius.
Thanks, Ernesto. Is an example of a Canadian-Ukrainian rivalry which demonstrates such friendliness and passion is in the realm of arm wrestling. If you ever want to have a look at, and I think the two pinnacles
Stop, Cornelius.
of arm
That's
wrestling.
An Murphy story. That's not true, is it?
Devin Larratt, the Canadian, versus son of a gun, a huge Ukrainian fella. And those two are the top two ranked arm wrestlers in the world. And if you Google them up, or actually YouTube them, you'll be astonished at these two. They're so friendly and nice, and nevertheless, each one of them could pull your arms off like a little spider without any hesitation. Good example.
Thank you, Cornelius. That's very interesting. I had no idea there was even any kind of professional league for arm wrestling, but some very interesting information there. Thank you for that insight. Ernesto.
My pleasure. I'm not an arm wrestler per se, but I used to work with that fella that's Canadian for decades.
Go ahead, Ernesto.
Was his name Andrei Pushkar? I just did Google. Was that his name, Cornelius?
It could well have been. I don't know if you can hear me. I'll look it up and I'll get back to us all.
Fair. My audio is in and out, so maybe just DM it as well in case I drop off. Well, yeah, please. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Martin. Welcome back.
Thanks, Tracy. Well, I know that Oleg Zolk is a Ukrainian arm wrestler, and Devin. Oh my God, Devin Lariat. He's a legend. The man is a legend. Former Special Forces member in the Canadian Armed Forces, and now I don't know if he's still number one, but certainly has been for a number of years one of the top heavyweight arm wrestlers in the world. He's a great, huge broth of a man, about 6'5". I think he weighs about 240. And actually, where I work part-time, there's a fella down the hall who's also a competitive arm wrestler. And so whenever I bump into him, we always talk, sports and arm wrestling in particular, because I like to follow a lot of sports, and arm wrestling certainly is a sport. I something I wouldn't do, but I admire those powerful men and women who engage in it. And he's told me that he's met Devin Lariat and seen him compete. So Cornelius, thanks for bringing up another Canadian legend. And speaking of Ukrainian athletes, well, of course. Here I go again. Because of our rich Ukrainian heritage in Canada, many top athletes have, were and have Ukrainian backgrounds. And there was a wrestler from Winnipeg, a professional wrestler, and I had the opportunity to meet him many, many years ago. George Gordienko. The whole family were the whole family were powerful, and I think his father was a Ukrainian immigrant. George Gordienko went on to he was a weightlifter and went on to wrestling, and possibly was one of the strongest human beings who ever lived. He was incredible. And of course, my father, as someone who grew up in the north end of Winnipeg, knew so many people and knew the Gordienko family, and told me the story. They talk about power. Now listen to this. Listen to this. So George Gordienko, the rest of us. So his dad worked at an ironworks factory here. It no longer exists. It was called Dominion Bridge Ironworks Factory, and the old man, Gordienko, was so powerful that he used to walk across the yard carrying 2 buckets filled with 75 pounds in each bucket of scrap metal. And according to my dad, that guys, fellow workers, his colleagues would often stop him in the middle of the yard and engage him in conversation while he was carrying these 2 buckets filled with 75 pounds each of scrap metal, just to see how long they could keep him standing and talking while holding the buckets of scrap metal in each hand. Like, can you imagine that type of strength? So it's no wonder one of his sons became a professional wrestler and weightlifter. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention about Ukrainian athletes and feats of strength and that sort of thing. So I don't know why I brought it up, but I guess because Cornelius, you were talking about arm wrestling and Devon. So anyways, enough about that. Slava Ukraini. Thanks for listening to my blabbing.
Hello, Slava. It was very interesting, Martin. Thank you. And thank you to Cornelius as well. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, thanks.
I hope Okie doke. So nobody has anything else they would like to comment right now, or a different topic they would like to raise. Now is your opportunity unless I will go waffling on, as always, talking away, doing the easy part whilst Christopher does all the complicated work in the background. So what else can I tell you that's been going on today whilst you decide if you would like to come and talk to us? Well, you can come and talk to us, you know. Apparently thousands of people are still continuing to gather at Navalny's grave. That's about all I want to say about that, unless anybody really wants to talk about it, but I don't really want to talk about that, quite frankly. The Russian Federation has had minor successes near Avdiivka. The deep state map has changed, apparently. Orivka and Torenka are under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. No, or the Soviet Union. It says the Soviet Union here. I don't know if that's just a translation issue. Sometimes I've noticed they're doing that more and more and meaning it. Sometimes it is just a translation thing. This is according to the spokesman of the Tavria troops. So this is Likova. In addition, UK intelligence in February said that the Russians had the highest average daily military losses since the beginning of the war, which actually they did. Well, it says, I think, was it 1160 or something? Was one of the totals that I remember. Was that today? All the days roll into one. But anyway, they've been really, really high consistently, haven't they, those numbers? I can't actually remember the last time that the invaders... Sorry, can you hear all the noise in the background from the traffic? Let me close the window. Apologies. What was I saying? I forgot what I was saying now. I distracted myself, Christopher. Yes, the numbers, that's what I was saying. Yeah, I can't remember a day when they were like, I don't know, 500 or something like that. Can you remember a day recently when that happened, Christopher?
No, I can't remember anything dipping below like 700 in the last couple of months.
No, exactly. So anyway, yeah, I just thought. So what else has been going on then? Let's have a look. Shall we see what's happening on a local level, or we can look at, let's have a look. Energy, or let's see what the Ministry of Environment has got to say. So I was looking, actually, they've put out some reports recently, Christopher, which I've got to delve into yet. I haven't had a chance to delve into them. About the ongoing damage and to the environment and things like that. And there's various reports about what do they call them now? Let me have a look in the drive and get the name correct. Anyway, I haven't had a chance to dig into them, but I think that might be quite interesting to talk about at some point. What do you think? Well, I'll have to give you a chance to be able to look at the report, of course.
Obviously, the environmental impact is going to be huge for decades to come. So the sooner you get a handle around it, the better you are to be able to plan moving forward. So I'd be interested to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, there's a couple of different reports from Ukraine, and then there's one from, I think, that involving the EU. There's various different universities and things like that involved in all sorts of different things that they're looking at, as you can imagine, from various different angles. But yeah, I want to definitely dig into the reports more. And as you say, it's an ongoing assessment, isn't it? It's not something that they can quantify at this stage. Or, I mean, even it's probably going to take, I don't know, it could even take a decade or more to be able to properly quantify. Maybe that's just my perception. I don't know what you think about that, Christopher, but I think it's quite feasible that it could take a number of years at least to be able to properly quantify, because the effects are still ongoing, aren't they? And of course, even in areas where the effects may have, I don't know, stopped, happening, then there's still, they can't even get to all of those areas to make those assessments. So, but anyway, I'm guessing.
On that note, I'm really kind of interested in to see what the Novakhovka Dam destruction, what that wrecked. I had seen people last year use some of that tidal land that had been drained, obviously, because